The Michigan Man Podcast, episode 165. The Wolverines are in their second week of fall practice, and the Big Ten season is right around the corner. Today we preview the Big Ten and find out if ESPN's Adam Rittenberg thinks Michigan will be in Indianapolis on the first Saturday of December. This is the Michigan Man Podcast on GBMW Go Blue Michigan Wolverine for Wolverine fans from coast to coast. Go Blue and welcome to the show. I'm your host, Mike Fitzpatrick. Well, on our Wolverine Warmups today, Michigan is now in their second week of fall camp. So far, just a few minor undisclosed injuries have been reported. Both Brennan Beyer and Derek Green were injured during the first week with what Coach Hoke described as boo-boos. He said both should be back in practice at some point this week. Other than that, nothing earth-shaking to report, and that is always a good thing at this early stage of practice. In just over 2 weeks, we begin the non-conference portion of the schedule when Central Michigan visits the Big House. That is followed by Notre Dame with Under the Lights in the Big House 2, then the Akron Zips, followed by a road trip to take on UConn. After that, the main course is served, which of course is the Big Ten schedule. The conference has taken a beating in the national media for more than a decade, as we are all aware, and would like to start the road back to national respectability. Could this be the year? Will Michigan and Ohio State make history by playing back-to-back games at the end of the season? Who knows? What we do know is that it should be one exciting season of conference play. On last week's show, we broke down the two deep on defense. Next week, we'll do the same with the Michigan offense. But this week, we're going to take some time to preview each team in the Big Ten. Joining us next on our Michigan Gameday segment is Adam Rittenberg from ESPN, here on the Michigan Man Podcast on GBMW Go Blue Michigan Wolverine. Here with us today on our Michigan Game Day segment as we preview the Big Ten for this upcoming season from the Big Ten blog, ESPN.com, Adam Rittenberg. Adam, great to have you back on the show.
Oh, good morning, Mike. Thanks for having me back.
Well, Adam, let's start on our Big Ten preview today down in Champaign with the Fighting Illini. They were the only team in the conference last year to go winless, and it looks like that could happen again.
Well, it couldn't get a whole lot worse for Tim Beckman after year one. Really, nothing went right for him. A lot of transition there. They went through some more transition in the offseason, some coaches departing or being removed from their posts. So I don't think it can get much worse on the field, but there will be some challenges. The schedule is not that easy. They play Cincinnati, a 10-win team from a year ago, as well as Washington in the non-conference, and they obviously have Ohio State, Penn State, and Wisconsin in the Leaders Division, in addition to a crossover game with Northwestern. So it's going to be a challenging schedule for Tim Beckman. I do think they made some good moves in the offseason. Bill Cubit, former Western Michigan coach, a guy that Michigan fans I'm sure are familiar with, is now the offensive coordinator. I think he'll provide a clearer vision for the offense with senior quarterback Nathan Schillhouse, but definitely an uphill climb for the Illini in year two under Tim Beckman.
Over in West Lafayette, sticking with the Leaders Division, Purdue Boilermakers, Coach Darrell Hazel, bright young star in the coaching profession. He knows how to turn a program around. We know that he has a mess on his hands offensively, at least, to start the season.
Well, I think, we'll see if it's a mess. I think they have potential to be okay on that side of the ball, but the quarterback position certainly is one with major question marks. Rob Henry, who's a senior, competing with true freshman Danny Etling, a guy who enrolled early, a heralded recruit who really impressed the coaching staff this spring. And so we'll see if he can continue that in camp and maybe beat out Rob Henry for the starting job. Henry, if you remember, actually was in place to start for Purdue back in 2011 and unfortunately tore his ACL just a couple of weeks before the season. So quarterback's definitely a question mark. I do like Akeem Hunt. They're smaller, faster running back. Guy has a home run ability. when he's in the open field. And they do have a decent offensive line. So they have some questions at wide receiver, tight end Gabe Holmes. They have high hopes for him, but it all comes down to that quarterback position and whether they could get some consistency in production there.
Yeah, when you look at that schedule, Adam, in the preseason, pre-Big Ten season, Cincinnati and Notre Dame, and then they kick off the Big Ten season with Nebraska, Ohio State, and Wisconsin. That's a tough go.
Yeah, no, I think it's the toughest schedule in the Big Ten. I mean, Daryl Hazel, I think in the future would love to avoid having to play two BCS teams from a year ago in non-conference play. They obviously have Notre Dame, the national runner-up from last year. That game is in West Lafayette. And they also have Northern Illinois, a team that went to the Orange Bowl and won the MAC. They've been MAC champions the last 2 seasons. They also open at Cincinnati. So really no gimmies for Daryl Hazel in addition to division play. They could easily be 1-7 in the middle of the Big Ten season. So it's going to probably be a rough go for them in year one, but I do like the potential there for the future under Daryl Hazel.
Well, up in Bloomington, the Hoosiers are in their 3rd year under Coach Kevin Wilson. They were one of the surprise teams in the conference last year, just a very dynamic offense. Have some problems on the defensive side, but a big year for the Hoosiers.
It is. I think if there's a team that may surprise some folks in the Big Ten, it might be Indiana. I think most of us expect Wisconsin and Ohio State to be the teams to watch and the leaders. I think the legends, it'll be Nebraska, Northwestern, Michigan State. But I think Indiana's a team that has the potential to rise up. They have 8 home games, as you mentioned, extremely dynamic on offense, a lot of weapons at wide receiver, maybe the best wide receiving core in the Big Ten, especially when you factor in the tight end position with Ted Bolser. Have multiple running backs. They have a very good young offensive line, and they have quarterbacks, several of them who have played. So, again, the story with Indiana hasn't changed, Mike, in about 25 years. It's the defense. I mean, they've just been horrendous on that side of the ball, and they have recruited better. So they have some younger players. They have some somewhat veteran players who played when they were freshmen. So ideally, that experience translates into more consistency and a defense that can at least keep them in the game because their offense is going to put up points. I
don't think anyone questions that. In Happy Valley, Adam, the Nittany Lions, a big year for them. The 2nd year with all of the sanctions in place. They have question marks at quarterback, and now because of those sanctions, depth is going to become a big key for the Nittany Lions.
Yeah, depth, especially I think on the defensive side of the ball. They're right now. I think they're only playing about a 5-man rotation, 6-man rotation on the line, and we both know that's not enough when you go into the season. So they're going to have to identify some other players. I do like a lot of their starters. I think some of their starters are among the best players in the league. When you look at Deion Barnes, the freshman of the year in the league last year at defensive end. Allen Robinson, the wide receiver of the league of the Big Ten, he's back there. Some decent offensive linemen, some excellent tight ends. That's the one position they have probably better depth than anyone in the conference. But quarterback, much like Purdue, much like Iowa, it's a common theme, is a question mark. They also have a true freshman competing, Christian Hackenberg, alongside a junior college transfer in Tyler Ferguson. Not a whole lot of depth there, but Bill O'Brien knows how to coach quarterbacks and develop them. But they cannot afford many injuries if they intend to duplicate what they did last year in year one of these sanctions.
Do you think, Adam, we'll start to see a drop-off this year from Penn State?
Again, it just comes down to the health. I really think that they're starting 22, if you put it that way, is as good as anyone's in the Big Ten. I think they have a lot of players in that starting lineup who are going to play at the next level, but they just cannot afford the type of injuries that hit a team like Michigan State last year or Minnesota, some of the more banged up teams in the Big Ten. Penn State just simply doesn't have the numbers to survive that. So it comes down to how fortunate they are, how well prepared they are. I know that they're not going to, for instance, practice as many times or for as long as some other teams in the Big Ten because they have to save their bodies for the season. So it really comes down to the fortune of injury, which is such a big factor in college football. And if they can stay healthy, I think that there's a good chance Penn State once again wins 7, 8, maybe 9 games.
I agree with you on that. Well, up in Madison, the new head coach, Gary Anderson, says he's committed to that Badgers power run game. He wants to incorporate some of the spread in his offense, though. Big year for the Badgers.
It is. I think it was interesting, Mike, as Brett Bielema, even before last season, was telling me and others in the media that this would be the year. This would be maybe his best team in Madison, and that was coming off of a couple of years where they won the Big Ten with guys like Russell Wilson and Monty Ball. So they really looked at this year as potentially another big year with 25 seniors coming back, but then you mix in the new coaching staff, some transition for sure. Yes, Gary Anderson keeping the power run game. Pretty easy decision when you have James White and Melvin Gordon in the backfield, but they're going to be making some significant changes on defense, going to more of a 3-4, so we'll see how they adjust to that. So I think it's a really unique dynamic with that team when you have so many veteran players who know how to win Big Ten titles, and then how do they mesh with the coaching staff coming from obviously the outside for the most part, and shaking things up at least schematically on defense.
And I know it's early, and this is Coach Gary Anderson's first year, but, do you think he is a good fit for that program?
I do. I think he's a heck of a coach. I mean, he wanted a place that I didn't think you could win, Utah State. I just thought that program was too far down the pecking order, and it just shows that in college football these days with some of the parity and the scholarship limits that a team like Utah State with the right coaching staff can rise up. I mean, they should have beat Wisconsin last year up in Camp Randall, which is never easy to do. And I do think Gary Anderson is going to do well there. I think he recognizes some of the areas where Wisconsin is deficient. You mentioned the spread, a little more mobility at quarterback, and he'll do that through recruiting. He also understands that they need to upgrade the wide receiver position. They don't have enough athletes there, probably not enough athletes in the secondary as well. So I think you're going to see some of the recruiting shift a little bit, ideally for the better, as Gary tries to put his stamp on the program.
Our last stop in the Leaders Division is in Columbus, Ohio, where travel agents are busy making plans for Pasadena. Do you think they're the real deal, Adam?
Well, it depends if you're talking about the Rose Bowl or the national title game, because they're both there and they're both on the radar for sure for the Ohio State Buckeyes this year. They're clearly the favorite to win the Big Ten after going 12-0 last year, the only FBS team to go undefeated and run the table. Year two under Urban Meyer, he certainly had success in the past. You're winning a national title in year two at Florida, and I think they're a team that has a pretty favorable schedule, and one that sets up well for a team that needs to grow up a little bit on defense. Only one returning starter in the front seven, and all Big Ten linebacker Ryan Shazier. So they have a ways to go on that side of the ball, but they should put up a lot of points. They're a lot like Nebraska, very dynamic on offense, a veteran quarterback, really good offensive line, but have to grow up in the defensive front seven.
Well, let's take a look now at the Legends Division, Adam, and our guest on our Michigan Game Day segment today as we preview the Big Ten is Adam Rittenberg from the Big Ten blog, ESPN.com. Adam, let's start with Iowa. They had a really tough season last year. They returned 6 starters offensively and 8 defensively. This offense is really green.
Yeah, it is. I mean, quarterback without a doubt. I mean, the whoever wins that competition is going to be taking his first snap in a college game, and there's certainly a lot of us question why Kirk Ferentz didn't at least get one of his younger quarterbacks into a game last year. Jake Rudock would have been the backup to James Vandenberg, who really struggled. I don't think it was all his fault with the new offense under Greg Davis. It just didn't seem to stick, and the transition was rocky there. So, but the way it is now is you're having a completely unproven quarterback. They should have. It's always a scary thing to say because of the history, but they should have pretty good depth at running back with Mark Weissman and Damon Bullock and Jordan Kanziri. So, coupled with the offensive line, I think Iowa has the potential to be one of the better running teams in the Big Ten, but they need help at receiver. C.J. Fedorowicz at tight end has been a guy that people have had high hopes for a very long time and hasn't really maximized his potential. So he's a guy to watch. And then on defense, we'll see. I mean, linebackers, they bring back all their starters, led by James Morris, who's a veteran player, pretty solid Big Ten linebacker, but they need some playmakers to emerge up front as well as in the secondary. They lose Micah Hyde, their best defensive back. So, Iowa's one of these teams, Mike, it seems like when you least expect it, they rise up and have a pretty good season. But you look at that division, they're probably 5th or 6th heading into the year. Pretty deep division, so it's going to be a challenge, I think, for Kirk Ferentz and his program to get back to where they were only a few years ago.
Well, up in Minneapolis, Adam, the Golden Gophers came within 3 points of knocking off Texas Tech in the bowl game. Fascinating bowl game to watch. Their first winning season since the 2008 campaign, they were 7-6. That program is really making strides under Coach Kill, isn't it?
Well, I think so. And Jerry Kill, you look at his track record. Typically, year 3, his programs make a pretty big jump. He did that at Southern Illinois. Northern Illinois won the MAC West Division title and got to the MAC title game before Jerry ended up taking the Minnesota job. So I think that program's headed in the right direction. He's hoping that bowl game that you mentioned can kind of be a springboard for Minnesota for this season. He saw more physical play, the play that you're more accustomed to seeing from Minnesota's offensive line. I mean, people forget Minnesota has a really good offensive line tradition that kind of fell off after Glenn Mason was fired. So I think it's important for Jerry Kill to get that going again, running the football. They have a young quarterback in Philip Nelson. I know they're excited about defensively. Definitely some holes to fill on that side of the ball. They lose two really good cornerbacks. They have some spots to fill at linebacker, but I like Rashid Hageman, the defensive tackle, in the middle of the line. And I think this is a big year for Minnesota to at least keep the momentum going and make another bowl game, maybe win a bowl game. And Jerry's talked to me a lot about the need to get a signature win for that program that really has an impact, not just for that moment, but maybe for that season and maybe for seasons in the future. He's had that in the past. I know he's looking for that with Minnesota.
Well, up in Evanston, the defense has always been a concern, at least the last few years for the Wildcats, but there might not be a better offensive team in the Big Ten Conference. Do you agree?
I don't think there's a better backfield. With Kane Coulter and Venrick Mark in the zone read game, when they get that going, and I saw it last year, it's almost impossible to stop when they have it blocked well. And if you have to replace three starters in the offensive line, but I think with those two guys, if they're healthy and they have the zone read going, Northwestern's going to be tough to stop. And I do think their defense is getting better. They're still prone to breakdowns late in games like we saw against Michigan, but I think they've recruited a lot better on that side of the ball. They have more athletes in all three levels of the defense. They've really tried to recruit speed and then complement it with size. So, for instance, they want safeties who can play linebacker and linebackers who can play defensive end. And so they have more speed now. I think they're just looking for a little bit more depth, and this could be the year where they put it together on defense.
No, I agree with you, Adam. I saw when they came to Ann Arbor last year, Venrick Mark and Kane Coulter. I don't think there's a quicker combination anywhere. They are very, very fast.
Absolutely. Venrick is a guy that, came to Northwestern, was pretty much a special teams player, a very, very talented return man, but he's actually surprised a lot of people in his ability to play running back in the Big Ten. I think going through a year, he realizes some of the punishment that he'll have to take in that spot. And Kane is a veteran quarterback, and he's still working on being a better passer, but we know what he can do with the ball in his hand.
Okay, next stop is in Lincoln. They're the reigning Legends Division champions. Pretty nice schedule early on in the season with a very tough November. But they have Taylor Martinez, and they're going to be right in the mix, aren't they?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you just look at, again, like Ohio State. There's so many similarities between those two teams, and that's why I think there's a decent chance that they meet in the Big Ten championship. Two young defenses that need time to grow up. But then you mentioned the schedule, and again, UCLA I think is the only team that could beat Nebraska in the first 2 months of the season. So it's going to be a pretty good chance you see them going into November undefeated, and then we'll really find out because they have Northwestern, Michigan State, Penn State. So definitely a backloaded schedule for Bo Pelini.
Well, let's move over to East Lansing with our friends, the Michigan State Spartans. A struggling run game last year continued into spring practice, but they have an elite defense. Could be a big bounce-back year for Coach D'Antonio and the boys.
It comes down to their offense. I think they've established themselves as one of the nation's elite defensive football teams. They still have Pat Narduzzi there as coordinator, Max Bulla, all Big Ten, All-America candidate at linebacker, Darquez Denard, maybe a first-round draft pick next April. He's one of the best cornerbacks, definitely in the Big Ten, if not the country. So it comes down to that offense. Can they find some answers there? They lose Le'Veon Bell. Quarterback is a major question mark there. Receivers a major question mark. So if that offense, they don't need to be Oregon, they don't need to be Texas A&M. They just need to be able to have some type of consistency to complement that great defense.
And the schedule sets up pretty well in the conference for them this year, though.
It does. I think that they're a team that will have a little bit of time to find its identity. They do play Notre Dame early on the road. That'll be a really good test against a very good defense. But they get Michigan at home. They do have to go to both Northwestern and Nebraska, I believe, in the Legends Division in November. But they miss Ohio State on the schedule. They also miss Wisconsin, so they don't have some of those really tough crossover games that they've had in past years. So it really comes down, much like Nebraska, to the month of November and the Legends Division, all those Legends Division games. I think the team between Nebraska, Michigan, Northwestern, and Michigan State that can go out and win a tough road game is probably the one that you're going to see in Indianapolis. So, for Nebraska, that's going out to Michigan. For Northwestern, that's maybe beating Nebraska on the road. For Michigan State, going out to a team like Northwestern or Nebraska and winning there. And Michigan also has some challenging road games. So it's going to be a really fun race in that division.
Last stop, Adam, Ann Arbor. The Big Ten schedule sets up pretty favorably for Michigan, at least early. It's a brutal November. Still a lot of question marks on both sides of the ball, though.
Yeah, the thing with Michigan, I think we would agree that everything is headed in the right direction under Brady Hoke as far as the recruiting efforts. But it's hard to tell if this is the year or if they're a year away. And I even asked Brady that when I saw him recently in ESPN headquarters in Connecticut. And it's just, I watched them in the spring, and you can see so much talent they have on both sides of the ball among their younger players. But the fact is, it's hard to win when you have so many young interior linemen on offense and some question marks on defense. They're not overly deep, I think, on the defensive side. But Devin Gardner seems positioned to have a tremendous year at the quarterback spot. I think there'll be more of a traditional Michigan offense with the big receivers and a big running back, whether that's Fitz Tucson or the incoming freshman Derek Green. So really excited to see what Michigan can do this year. And I think if they can stay healthy and get into November with a pretty good record, they definitely have a chance to win that division and get to their first Big Ten championship game.
Well, I think it's going to be a very exciting race. There's no question both divisions have a lot of intrigue. So right now, in early August, Adam, in the Legends division, who do you see coming out on top?
I'm going to stick with my pick, which is Michigan. And I just think that like you said, the way the schedule sets up, they'll have some time to find themselves and figure out what they're about. And the younger players eventually, I think, will be pretty solid in the month of November. But it's a very tough division to forecast because it's so backloaded. I mean, really the games that matter are going to be in November. How's the health of those teams? In Michigan, we all know, can't afford to lose Devin Gardner. Northwestern was very healthy last year. Can they replicate that? Can Nebraska keep Taylor Martinez healthy and then grow up on defense? Michigan State, can they find an offense? So it's going to be really interesting, and we won't know a whole lot, I think, in that division until November 1st comes around.
And then over in the Leaders division, do you see anyone stopping Ohio State?
Well, I think Wisconsin, if they have a chance, they're really the team to do it, obviously, with Penn State ineligible. And they do get Ohio State early. It's on the road, which is never easy to win a game in Columbus, especially a night game. But Wisconsin is the more experienced team going into that game. I think Ohio State, we'd agree, is the more talented team. So if Ohio State's still evolving, if they're still making some mistakes with that young defense, especially the young defensive front, if Wisconsin's offensive line can get going and get Melvin Gordon and James White off and running. I mean, Wisconsin showed last year that at times they can put up a ton of points. So I think that they're going to have their best effort of the season, but you only have to beat Ohio State once in that division to hold the tiebreaker. So it really is going to come down, I think, to Wisconsin. If they can just get a jump on a young Ohio State team in that game, they have a real good chance to once again return to Indianapolis. But if Ohio State wins there, I think they're only going to get better as the season goes along. And they're certainly my pick. I think it's going to be hard for anyone to get past the Buckeyes.
Well, if you're on the mark then, Adam, that sets up a Big Ten championship game with Michigan and Ohio State. And it can only happen this year, but they would be playing in back-to-back weekends. That's sort of an interesting occurrence, isn't it?
It is. It's the last time it can happen, obviously, with Ohio State and Michigan going to the East Division. And whether you like it or you don't like it, it would be a unique situation for those two fan bases to reunite 1 week later. The Big Ten championship game in the first 2 years, the first game was great with Michigan State and Wisconsin, but the crowd hasn't been that big, and the whole spectacle of the game, it certainly hasn't matched what you see in the SEC. But I guarantee you, if it's Michigan and Ohio State, given all the history, that game will certainly be one that has a lot more national attention.
Well, we have a lot to look forward to. We're just a couple of weeks away. It's going to be a fascinating Big Ten season. And with us today on our Big Ten preview show has been Adam Rittenberg from the Big Ten blog, ESPN.com. As always, Adam, we've enjoyed having you on the show and look forward to the next time.
Sounds good. Thanks, Mike.
Thanks again to our guest today, Adam Rittenberg from ESPN. for helping us preview this year's Big Ten Conference. Coming up next, news and notes from camp on Wolverine Quick Hits as we wrap it up for another week here on the Michigan Man Podcast on GBMW Go Blue, Michigan Wolverine. On Wolverine Quick Hits today, just 2 injuries to report after the first week of fall practice, which we touched on at the top of the show. Both Brennan Beyer and freshman Derek Green have boo-boos, that according to Coach Hoke. He expects both of them back in practice this week. Regarding Derek Green's camp weight of 240 pounds, Coach Hoke and Coach Fred Jackson are not concerned. They say he'll lose some of that during camp and should reach the start of the season in the 230-something range. They both say his speed and footwork are better than they expected. The competition to see who will be Devin Gardner's backup is in full swing too. Both Brian Cleary and Shane Morris are getting equal snaps in practice. Hoke says he hopes to have a backup decided on by the opener. Both have had some good moments, but as expected, they've also struggled, which also has to be expected at this stage of practice. Kyle Kalis told MLive's Nick Baumgardner that he did not enjoy sitting out last season, but understood why he was redshirted. From all reports, Kalis is more than ready, physically and mentally, to assume the role of starting left guard this season. Coach Funk says that Kalis looks good, has a real nasty streak, and most importantly, has a better grasp of the offense now. At his Monday presser this week, Coach Brady Hoke said his team has to play with more speed and more power this year if they are going to compete for a Big Ten title. He says practices have been good so far, but he hasn't seen that speed and power displayed as a team yet. The battle for the starting center position is still ongoing in the second week of practice. Jack Miller and Graham Glasgow were neck and neck entering fall practice, and Coach Hoke says that is still the case. He hopes to have a starter named by next week. Thanks again to our guest today, Adam Rittenberg from the Big Ten blog, ESPN.com. Next week, we're going to focus on the Michigan offense and could have a better idea of how the two deep is shaping up by then. We hope to have Michael Rothstein from WolverineNation, ESPN.com, on as our guest, so don't forget to join us next Wednesday for that. Now that fall practice has started, you'll need your daily fix of Michigan football. There is no better place to get it than right here at GBM Wolverine. Visit www.gbmwolverine.com and become a member today. We have player profiles, recruiting news, our lively message board, plenty of chatter about this season, and the always popular Monday Night Live chat with all of our talented writers here at GBM Wolverine. So don't delay. Visit www.gbmwolverine.com and join today. Make sure you're in the Wolverine loop this season. Don't forget our show app is now available from a variety of sources. For Android users, we're in the Market Store at Amazon.com. For Apple devices, our app is available in the iTunes Store. Another great way to tune us in for free is with the TuneIn Radio app. You can also hear the show on Stitcher Radio on demand. Download the free app today at www.stitcher.com. Get the latest episodes faster on Stitcher, where the latest shows continually update. Our phone lines are open for your calls 24/7, and we would love to hear from you. Give us your prediction on this season or anything else maize and blue that you have on your mind. Call 313-263-4842. That's 313-263-4842. You can also email your thoughts and opinions to the Michigan Man Podcast at yahoo.com. Again, next week, we break down the Wolverine offense 2 deep with Michael Rothstein from WolverineNation, ESPN.com, so don't forget to join us for that. That will also put us 1 week away from our Central Michigan preview show. Hard to believe it's coming up that fast. So until then, I'm your host, Mike Fitzpatrick. Have a great Wolverine week, everyone, and as always, go blue. Thanks for listening to the Michigan Man Podcast on GBMW Go Blue Michigan Wolverine. You can find us on the web at www.gbmwolverine.com. That's www.gbmwolverine.com. For audio posts or other fan feedback, please call our listener line at 313-263-4842. That's 313-263-4842. Email fan feedback to the Michigan Man Podcast at yahoo.com. That's the Michigan Man Podcast at yahoo.com. The Michigan Man Podcast on GBMW Go Blue Michigan Wolverine is produced at the studios of Robin Lynn Productions, Allen Park, Michigan. The Michigan Man Podcast is not affiliated with the University of Michigan. Go Blue!